started. I know more people are going to be joining us, but we'll look forward to seeing them soon. So good morning and good afternoon. Before we start our official event, I want to let you know that there is translation and interpretation available. So if you go down to the bottom of your page, there should be a button for interpretation or translation. So just click on the button of your language of choice, either English or French, so that you make sure that you can hear the program throughout the day. So hi everybody, I'm Sarah Austin and I am the founder and CEO of Children First Canada. My pronouns are she and her, and today I'm in Calgary, Alberta in Treaty 7 territory. And I am so excited to be welcoming you to the 2021 launch of the Young Canadians Parliament, hosted by Children First Canada. I'm so excited to get to know each and every one of you, and I want to get to know who you are and the change that you want to see in this world and hear what you have to say. Shortly, I'm going to be introducing our young hosts for the day, but before I do so, I want to first acknowledge the land that we are all gathered on. Today's event brings us together from coast to coast to coast. So we are all situated on different traditional territories across Canada, or what is also known as Turtle Island. Children First Canada is a national organization, and our staff are currently located in Ottawa, Calgary, and Toronto. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Iskia Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, and the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, covered by Treaty 13 and signed by the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties signed by multiple Mississaugas and the Chippewa bands. I want to encourage each of you to take a moment to honor the land that you are on today. And if you don't know what land you're on, you can click on the link in the chat box to find out. I also want to recognize that June is National Indigenous History Month. It's a time to learn about and celebrate the history and diverse and rich cultures and traditions of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. But it's also a time to learn about and reflect on the painful legacy of systemic anti-Indigenous racism and the legacy of residential schools, and to recommit ourselves to move forward in the spirit of reconciliation. As a country, we are still all reeling from the news of the 215 Indigenous children whose bodies were recently discovered at the former residential school on the land of Tk'emlúps Squaxin First Nation. And in the past 24 hours, the grave sites of at least 100 more children were found on the site of a former residential school in Brandon, Manitoba. This news has unsurfaced so much grief and trauma, not only for the loss of these children, but for the 150,000 known Indigenous children who were stolen and forced to attend residential schools, for the survivors and their families. In your welcome kit for the YCP, you've received a child and youth friendly copy of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. If you haven't yet read it, I really ask you to do so. We all have a role to play in bringing about the calls to action, helping them to come to life and be fulfilled, and ensuring that there is justice for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We're going to take a moment to pay our respects to the 215 children, as well as to honor the survivors of their families. And we also want to pause and pay our respects to those affected by the recent attack on the Muslim family in London, Ontario, while out for an evening walk. It is a sobering reminder that anti-Muslim hate is pervasive in our country. In one act of terrorism, 3 generations of a family tragically lost their lives, and Muslim children and their families across the country lost a sense of safety within their communities. So let's take a moment together, a moment of silence to reflect and to honor these people. And I encourage you to join in responding by pressing the reaction button in our Zoom tabs and putting out hundreds of hearts. Thank you. Now, as you begin your official mandate as a member of the Young Canadians Parliament, I ask you to consider how you will use your voice, your hands, and your feet to promote reconciliation. As members of the YCP, there are more than 250 of you members, and you need to use the tools of democracy to raise your voices. You have the right to be seen and heard, and with rights come responsibilities. As you go forward, I ask that you remember the 215 children and the thousands of survivors and families, and to honor the truth and commit yourselves to action. As part of our commitment to reconciliation, we've invited Elaine Johnston from Serpent River First Nation to open our day together in a good way. I'm not sure if Elaine has been able to join us or not. I'm just going to check with Camille. She's here. Welcome, Elaine. We are so honored that you could be with us today. Thank you so much for opening our time together in a good way. I want to offer you this tobacco and invite you to begin our time together in ceremony.
Aha, miigwech. Miigwech Neshomas, thank you, grandfather. Miigwech Nokomis, thank you, grandmother. Thank you to the Creator for all our blessings. For the shining sun today, I say thank you for today. I give thanks for our parents, our brothers and sisters, our uncles and aunties, our grandparents, our cousins. We give thanks. We give thanks for our friends. They support us, and we give thanks for them. We give thanks to our mother, the earth, and all that she provides, the water that we drink, the sun that shines, the moon, the stars, and the galaxies. We give thanks to all the animals, the four-leggeds, the two-leggeds, and the many-leggeds, the crawlers, the swimmers, the winged ones. We give thanks for them. Thank you for giving us the food we eat, the water that we drink, and all the blessings that we receive. Thank you for the creators in all our world, for the technology that we love so much, our cell phones and all the gadgets we so enjoy. Thank you for the gifts we all and each and every one of us has. You all have gifts, and we give thanks for those gifts of sharing, those gifts of baking, those gifts of singing, and all the gifts that each and every one of you have. Thank you for all the races of man, of every color, religion, belief, of every shape, size, color. You all matter. We all matter. Thank you for the lessons and the teachings of our ancestors. They teach us so much about ourselves, about our history, about who we are in this world. We are grateful, and we give thanks. We thank you for all of the directions, the four directions, the east, south, west, and north, but also above and below. We give thanks for this, Mishomas. We give thanks, and we thank you. We thank you for the many, many blessings that we receive, and we have to give thanks each day for the things that we enjoy and that we are grateful for, but also the things that bring us down because they teach us something about ourselves and our place in this world. We give thanks for those lessons. And most of all, we give thanks for this day, whether it's raining or sunny. These are important for our Mother Earth and for ourselves. We give thanks. Thank you, kind spirit. Thank you to the grandfathers and the grandmothers, and for the creation of all things. We give many thanks and blessings. Miigwech.
Thank you, Elaine. Miigwech, miigwech, miigwech. Thank you for starting our time together in a good way and for honoring us and sharing culture and beginning our time together in such a powerful way. Friends, now it's your time, and I want to start by thanking all of you for applying and for committing yourselves to be a part of the Young Canadians Parliament. This past year has been exceptionally challenging for all Canadians, but especially for youth. You have been asked to make enormous sacrifices, and you've been deprived of your most basic rights. You've been denied your right to an education, your right to play and be physically active, your right to good mental and physical health care, your right to be protected from violence, your right to adequate housing and nutritious food, and much, much more. At a time when you've lost so much and your friends have lost so much, I'm inspired that you've chosen to dedicate your time and your energy to promoting your rights and the rights of your peers. Seeing all of you here today gives me so much hope. I'm an advocate for all 8 million kids in Canada, but I'm also the mom of a 10-year-old boy named Felix. I've seen the impacts of the pandemic on him and his friends and his families. I've heard from countless children and youth over the past year, along with their parents and grandparents. It has been a hard year, and so I want to honor you and what you've been through And this Young Canadians Parliament is a powerful way for you to be a part of affecting change for yourselves and for your peers all across the country. As I mentioned earlier, I'm coming to you now from Calgary, Alberta in Treaty 7 territory. I have lived in the prairies in central Canada and in Atlantic Canada, and I've also had the pleasure of visiting the Canadian Arctic as well as the Western coast. And I hope it won't be long before we can all travel together and be together in person again. But until that's possible, I'm so glad that we can be here together virtually. And thank you for joining us from coast to coast to coast. Each of you represents the diversity of Canadian society, and each of you has unique ideas and life experiences and something very special to share. There is nobody in the world quite like you, and I am so grateful that you're here. You are not just leaders of the future, you are leaders today. And I'm looking forward to learning from you and offering you our support. The Young Canadians Parliament was designed for youth, by youth, and the goal is to provide a space for children and youth where you can share your concerns, your ideas, your recommendations, your creativity, and to work for and with federal leaders to effect powerful change. This is a growing movement of young leaders across the country, and we are thrilled that you are part of it. Today's event will be hosted by Shuru and Taylor, two young leaders who've been a big part of the success of the Young Canadians Parliament in planning and working so hard over the past few months. Later today, you're going to be joined by Brooks Roche, a member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council. And we also have some very special guests this weekend from Parliament, including the Minister of Canadian Heritage, the Honourable Stephen Guilbeault, who will be joining us today to offer some encouragement and wisdom as we move forward with our activities. And tomorrow you will be joined by several members of Parliament who will be responding to your questions and breakout groups around the topics that each of you selected when you registered. These members of Parliament include Elizabeth May, Kenny Chiu, Lindsay Matheson, Don Davies, Corey Tochor, Greg Fergus, Richard Cannings, Peter Julian, Senator Kim Pate, and Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, and there may be a couple of more. There's been some last-minute changes, but we're so thrilled that so many members of the Parliament are going to be a part of this process with you. And we are also honored to be welcoming Blair McBruin, who is the Director General of Strategic Policy and International Affairs at Canadian Heritage. He will be teaching us how to write a policy brief, which is a tool that federal staff use to create documents for ministers to give them advice and recommendations. So it's now my enormous pleasure and privilege to hand this event over to our two youth hosts, Shuru and Taylor, to get this official session of the YCP underway. So please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Welcome everyone, my name is Shahra. My pronouns are she and her. I'm from Ontario and I live on the ancestral land of the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee people. I'm Muslim and I'm of Bengali descent. I'm bilingual, but I used to know a few more languages, including Arabic and Hindi. The language I do know are English, of course, and Bangla. Hobbies I like include creating clothes from scrap. I'm really into fashion. Another fun fact about me is that I refuse to wear the clothes I make in public, which says a lot about my skills, but and I'll be one of your co-hosts today. We're so excited to have you here at our Young Canadians Parliament. To be quite honest, I'm sort of nervous if you can't tell, but I know this is going to be a great experience for all of us, so I'm not that worried that anyone will remember me tripping on my words. Remember that you can listen in French today by clicking interpretation on the bottom of your screen and then select French as the language. On behalf of Children First Canada, I just want to say thank you for being here today and for taking the time to engage with our civil duties, as this event is one where dozens of people have invested countless of hours into making perfect so that our voices could be elevated to create discussion and tangible actions around the issues that matter most to us. Seeing all of us here today, passionate, driven, brought together by common goals, is so inspiring, and hopefully we can carry this enthusiasm with us through today's events and future ones. It is incredible that our nation offers us an opportunity like this one. It's not in every country that youth get to speak up like we do. However, young people across the country are often left behind. Our needs are often forgotten, and most issues that affect us aren't really addressed. Yet today, we can now hope that through the initiative of Young Canadians Parliament, we can begin change and truly make Canada the best place in the world for children to grow up.
Ani Bojo Taylor Dishnikas Ganabajina Donjaba Makwadodem. Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Johnston. My pronouns are she and her. I am from Serpent River First Nation, which is located in Ontario in the Robinson-Huron Treaty, and I am a part of the Bear Clan. I would like to consider myself a very outdoorsy person. During the summer, I love to spend time on the lake, and I swim and I do camping. My hobbies include fishing, hunting, playing hockey, and swimming. I will openly say that I'm also very nervous to be co-hosting, as I am not the greatest at public speaking. And if you do know me, I'm a generally shy person, but once you get to know me, I ease up. I'm not as shy, but yeah, so with that being said, I'm excited to be your co-host alongside Shira today. She is certainly right. It is great to see so many young people joining and for us to have the chance to share our voices on issues that are really important to us. We're absolutely thrilled to be your host and to experience this event with you all today. The overall goal of Young Canadians Parliament is for young people to learn about their rights, interact with government leaders, and share their views about the topics that matter the most to them. This year, we want to continue to build on the successes of last year's YCP. This year, our goal is to support all of you to create recommendations that will go into a report that we are sending to all members of Parliament. We will create something called a policy brief to explain our recommendations and then create an advocacy plan so we can bring more awareness to our concerns. And we will achieve this goal together.
Our YCP series this year will be quite different from previous years. So this year we hope to work consistently with all of you to develop a report of recommendations that address the issues that young people find important, which will be delivered to parliamentarians. Our first event in this series is today and tomorrow, where we will learn about the issues, what changes we hope to implement, and how to write a government brief. And then on July 17th, we will work together to create government briefs on our own respective topics. Then on August 14th, we will transform these government briefs into an advocacy plan that we will build together. And then from August to October, we will activate this plan by writing the report of recommendations. On October 16th, we will review the report that was prepared and plan the launch of the report. And then sometime in November, we will have a report launch event. And finally, from November to December, we hope for all of you to present this report in your classrooms for your peers and teachers to learn from.
Now on to the agenda. We have a very exciting next couple of days. Today's activities will start off with us exploring what it means to be treaty people in Canada. Then we will hear from Brooks Roche, a member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council. After this, we will discuss the values of our event today. Once we have laid this groundwork, we will split up into breakout rooms based on pre-selected topics, where we will learn about the current state of our topics, facts, laws, and more. Following this event, we will take a short break and then return back to our breakout rooms, where we will share experiences, ask questions, and provide ideas as to how things can change. After the second round of breakout rooms conclude, we will hear from Minister Guilbeault and conclude our day of activities. But the event doesn't end there. We will all return once again tomorrow for some more great activities, so stay tuned. We know some people love using the chat, but many here today are using screen readers because they cannot see the screen. It is really hard to listen to what people are saying while the screen reader is also telling you what is being typed in the chat. If you are shy or having technical difficulties and would like to use the chat in your breakout rooms, please privately message your facilitator and they will read your thoughts out loud. Before we begin the next proportion of our day, I would just like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. And if you do not wish to be recorded, please feel free to change your name and turn off your camera. As well, if you require any closed captioning services, then please click on the link in the chat to access it. We are now going to hand it off to Elaine Johnson. Elaine Johnson Waskinankwe is a proud Anishinaabe woman of the Turtle Clan of Serpent River First Nation. She is a registered nurse with her Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Elaine started her health career in ambulance as a medic and on the helicopter as a paramedic. And she went on to receive her diploma in nursing and later on her nursing degree. She has worked in First Nation communities and on the Coast Guard Bandage 1 helicopter, now known as Orange, on ambulance in Sudbury, in the hospital, in the emergency unit, and the intensive care. She was a chief of her community for 4 years and served on council for 10. Elaine serves on numerous boards and committees, and she is the eldest of 11 women in the Johnston family, with numerous nieces and nephews. Elaine is going to teach us about what treaties are and how we are all treaty people in Canada, and what real nation-to-nation relationship looks like. Elaine, the floor is yours.
Miigwech Taylor, and I'll start off with my Anishinaabe name. Wawaskanoque Dishnakas Shikan Dodem Ganabajing Donjaba. I've just told you that my spirit name is Flower Woman of the Turtle Clan of Serpent River First Nation. And I want to start off by saying that Anishinaabe people tend to be very spiritual people. And that's important for you to understand when we're talking about treaties. And I'm going to share something with you. And I realize that you're going to be working on policy papers. And one of the things that I didn't put in my bio is that I am running for Ontario Regional Chief here in Ontario. And in order for me to do that, I did go into ceremony. And I did have a vision when I did do that. And I wanted to share that with you. And one of the things that I think is important is that when we go into ceremony, we do try and close off our minds and listen to our heart and connect with the spirit. And I was reminded when I did that was that I had the opportunity many years ago to go across Canada to talk to First Nations people. And the question that I was asking was about resiliency. How come we are so resilient? Because we've had so much happen to us over 500 years. We've had the Indian Act, which put us on reserve lands. We've had residential schools, Indian day schools. Our veterans were not treated very well when they went and fought beside Canadians in World War I and World War II and other wars. When they came home, they weren't treated very well. We've had 60 scoop of our children. We've had many of our children in child welfare, just like residential schools. There has been so many things that have happened to us over 500 years. And so my question to the elders and to the young people and to the people of the community, when I did travel across Canada, I said, you know what? There's been a lot of trying to remove us, to decrease our wanting to be here. Why is that we're still here? And the resounding response across Canada was our connection to spirit, our connection to our creator, our connection to the land, and our connection to each other. That was what I heard over and over, no matter what nation that we came from in the First Nations. That's what I heard them all say. And so I think it's important for you to understand that, because it gives you a different perspective about worldview when we're talking about treaties. And I think that is most important, that you understand that many of us come from a spiritual perspective, and that connection to the land is very important to who we are as people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history. And what happened, there was what they call the Treaty of Paris in 1763. And it was the announcement of the 7 Years' War, also called the French and Indian Wars of North America, between England and France, which had raged between the two countries in Europe and in North America. And this treaty is not to be confused with the Treaty of Paris 1783, which ended the War of Independence between the United States and England. But it gives you sort of where it all started. And so this Treaty of Paris 1763 was signed February the 10th, 1763, and saw France renounce to England all the territory of North America east of the Mississippi River. So the Kingdom of England assumed sovereignty over this territory, which France believed to have was to have exercised sovereignty. But the indigenous nations of North America never accepted that France owned the territory and had no right to transfer it to England. There was neither a war nor a treaty between the indigenous nations of North America and the Kingdom of France that granted France ownership of that territory. Then next came the Royal Proclamation of 1763. And this was issued by King George III that sets out the principles for sovereign relations. And basically what it says to the people of England is that lands did not become available for European settlement until an agreement for sharing with the indigenous peoples of this area was secured. So that proclamation said that if you want to settle on any land on this new territory, then you had to settle with the communities. In 1764, there was a council at Niagara Falls, and there were about 1,700 indigenous inhabitants gathered there from all over. And there were ceremonies that were done. And what happened there is that there was a covenant chain that was done, and it was called the Treaty of Niagara. So the First Peoples of the Great Lakes joined the British Haudenosaunee Covenant Chain Alliance in 1761. And when the British treated the region as conquered territory, the Anishinaabe and other nations expelled British garrisons and settlers from most of the territory in Pontiac's War. So when they talk about Pontiac's War, what is talked about is the War of 1812. So if you recall any of your history, if you're learning any history, the War of 1812 was basically what sort of brought about the development of Canada, because the British were looking for alliances. And so the alliances that were formed was with the First Nations people. And they renewed the alliance and understood that there was a covenant chain and the Royal Proclamation that said you can't settle on any land, you have to develop treaties. So this is really important. And so, but the other thing that I think people need to understand is that, and I want you to put yourself in this situation. You're now the First Nations people, and I'm going to be, the person that's coming from another country and says, well, I need to settle a treaty with you. We have different perspectives. We have different worldviews, different things that we believe, different languages. And so you got to remember that if you have a language and I have a language, do we understand each other? Do we understand what we mean when we have this language? And so this is part of the issue when the treaties were settled, is that there was a different understanding about what was actually involved in the treaty. The other thing that also happened at that time was that the settlers, the ones that wanted the treaty, would bring things with them to sort of encourage the First Nations to enter into treaty. And you got to remember, in that history time of that time, there was disease. We were all fighting smallpox and different diseases. And so sometimes we call them the settlers. They were known from the First Nations perspective as the Indian agent. And the Indian agent would bring a doctor along and say, well, if you settle this treaty, then we can get you health services, or the doctor can treat you because I know that you don't know how to deal with, the smallpox, for example. And so they kind of, well, if you do this, then we'll give this to you. And that was done, but also the language. Many of our Anishinaabe First Nation languages don't have words for some of the things that were agreed upon. So there was a different understanding about what they actually meant. And again, it gets back to that, what do we have a true understanding of what we're agreeing to? So if the British and the Canadian government saw treaties really as a way to legalize the ceding of Indian lands to clear the way for European settlement, mining, and railways. And treaties were intended to extinguish First Nations claims and rights to their land forever. However, on the other side, the First Nations saw treaties in a different way. They saw them as they would enter into ceremony, they saw them as spiritual, and they saw them as a pact saying, you're going to go in your canoe, I'm going to go in my canoe, we're going to go along with each other side by side with our own government, our own language, our own way of doing things, and we'll share the resources, the land together. So it was two different thoughts about what they thought they were entering into in a treaty. The other thing that I think governments or the people, the Indian agent of the day, they thought, well, I'll make a one-time payment for the land. They believed in ownership of the land. First Nations didn't believe in ownership of the land. They believed in sharing. I know in my territory here, there was a lot, we were hunters and gatherers. So we would travel from trap line to trap line, fishing lines. We would go from land to land. And so it wasn't necessarily this was my land, we shared it and we traveled from place to place. So it was, but we also had a responsibility to take care of the land so that, you know, we could continue to fish those waters, that we could continue to hunt in this particular area. So we had that responsibility because we were connected to it, and we always offered our tobacco to the Creator to say, if we took, a moose, we would, and we were successful in killing the moose, we put our tobacco down and we give thanks to the moose spirit, and we say, give thanks, for all the things that you're going to provide for us, because you're going to provide the food and your hide and things for us to make out of your bones. So there was a lot of things that we did that were part of our spiritual practices. And so we were coming at it from a very different perspective. And in regards to hunting and fishing, the Indian agent of the day thought, they believed that we were giving up those rights. And we were looking at it differently and saying, no, we want to, we'll agree to share those lands with you, but we will still want to be able to hunt and fish in those lands. And we never thought that we were giving our lands away, that we thought we were sharing it with the newcomers. So I think that because we were coming at two very different perspectives, and I don't think we've come to that realization today, that, you know what, we're at crossroads now. There's a feeling that we didn't understand each other when these treaties were signed and agreed to. And now we're understanding, because there are court cases that are happening that are showing that, yeah, there was different understandings, because even in the language, there are words that you cannot say, well, we're giving away this land. There were words that for example, in my area, we are part of the Robinson-Huron Treaty, and we've had to go to court in regards to our Robinson-Huron Treaty. We've had our elders go to to court and talk in the language and explain there were no words for these things that you're talking about. And so if there were no words for it, there's a different understanding about what we thought we agreed to. And so I think that if right now this is the problem in regards to, well, what are treaties? And then when we say we are all treaty people, yes, we are all treaty people, because if you look at the Royal Proclamation that I talked about of 1763, that was the intent of the government, or of the King of England at the time, and said, in order for settlers to come and settle on this land, they had to settle treaties. And so your people, my people, had to settle these treaties for you to come and settle on this land. So your people are also part of that treaty. So the government of the day are the people that signed that treaty, as well as the First Nations on our side that settled that treaty. So we are all treaty people, and we all have a responsibility for this treaty. So, and that's why we say we were the first peoples of this land. We were here, we had our own systems of government, we had our own spirituality, we had our own medicines, we had our own food, you know, the way of life that we had. And it was very spiritual. It was connected to the land. It was connected to the waters. It was connected to each other, which was different than the settlers that came. They had a very different viewpoint, but we were willing to work together with our respective canoes and go down that river together and share what we had. And so this is where we're at today, is saying, okay, are we going to respect and honor what we thought was understood at the time of those treaties? There were also peace and friendship treaties where we said, okay, we are not going to be at war with you. We are going to be peaceful. We're going to share. We're going to be friends as we continue on in this great country. And so if you look at it, even in some of our medicines, a lot was shared. You know, when I talk about technology and medicines, we shared some of that. So it's actually in some of the medicines that you take now. And some of the things that we did in this great country we call Canada and North America, we as First Nations call it Turtle Island. So I just wanted to just share that with you in regards to the treaties, that it's different perspectives about how we all see treaties and in the agreement that was agreed upon. And I think that if we can understand that, we're probably better in moving forward. And I just wanted to just say to, when the settlers came here, there was a lot of things that my people experienced. As I said, there were 500 years of stuff, you know, and there's been a lot of grief and loss that my people have experienced over time. And I'm going to speak to the residential school system, and you've heard it in the media. And I think that you understand why the grief and loss that my people are feeling, because put yourself in, if you were, okay, and I said this to the school boards just this morning. I'm a parent, or you're the child, and the police come and take your children away, kicking and screaming, and you have no choice but to let these children go to the school. And then you never see them. They lose their language, they lose their culture. They are in these schools, and some of them have not a bad experience, but some of them have a horrible experience. They're abused. There are experiments done on them. There are many things that happen to these children in these schools. And then the parents never know sometimes that they've died. Never know that they've been buried somewhere and they never return. And then think about yourself. Many of you, you're young people. If you were in that situation and you were taken away from your parents, taken away from your brothers and sisters and from the people that you know, and put into a school, and you had to survive in this school with no love and support from your family back home, how would you feel? And then how would you feel if you got sick and you didn't know, and you're crying for your mother and your father? So that's what I'm trying to give that perspective of, you know, our people have gone through horrendous things. Same thing with our veterans. They fought alongside many of our Canadian brothers and sisters in World War I and World War II. When they came back, they were not treated the same. They did not get the same opportunities as the veterans, the other veterans that fought in those wars. Many of them had addiction problems when they came back. They were promised land, they were promised housing, they never got it. When you think about the 60s scoop of our children, many of our children were scooped up to be put into homes for child welfare, taken away again from their families. So that's why I'm saying it's just so many policy decisions that have been made over 500 years that have affected my people. And so you can understand a little bit why the anger, why that feeling of grief and loss. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. And it is happening. It's slowly happening. But I think we need help in regards to that healing that needs to occur. And so I just wanted to share that with you, that I think we're all important people in this world, each and every one of us, no matter what race, color, creed, belief, religion, we are all important. You are important. And the decisions that you make in this world are important, and you can make a difference. So I say miigwech to you for listening. And I know that that you've got a lot on your plate, but I am so grateful for this opportunity to share my story with you. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Elaine. It was really informative, especially like I've been through the Alberta and like Ontario like education system, and I always feel like our social studies and like our histories classes, they don't really touch on they only touch the surface level of like the topics you talked about today. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us, truly. Next up, we have Brooks Roche. He is a member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council, and he would like to share some wisdom and encouragement with us as we move through today's activities. Brooks holds a Master of Business Administration and Global Leadership from the University of Prince Edward Island and a Bachelor of Environmental Design Studies from Dalhousie University, acclaimed School of Architecture. He's a member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council, providing non-partisan advisory to the Prime Minister and federal government on issues of importance to youth, Canadian youth. Brooks is a highly versatile design thinker with diverse and multi-scale experience in the human-centered design, business, and research. He prioritizes sustainability and exclusiveness, offering a skill set honed as a nationally recognized leader, and volunteers with the community to develop initiatives across the country. Brooks' lived experience has fostered an approach of creativity and collaboration and made him a conscious, considerate leader with the constant goal of improving others' qualities of life. With that, please welcome Brooks.
Thank you so much, folks, and I'd like to also just thank Elaine for sharing for me. I really appreciated hearing that story. I'd like to first off introduce myself. So after that wonderful introduction, my head is a little bit swollen, but I appreciate the succinct and comprehensive look at some of what I've done. So my name is Brooks Roche, and I'm calling in from Prince Edward Island today, which is on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. My pronouns are he and him. I'm so excited to be joining in today. I think when I first heard about Young Canadians Parliament, I was struck by how much I wished that I had this opportunity when I was a bit younger. So a little bit about maybe what I'd like to do is explain kind of how I got to where I am today and what I wish I had known, on the note of wishing I had these opportunities. I think it's so wonderful that you all have this chance. So about 20 years ago, I'm going to rewind the clocks quite a long way. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So as you might have spotted my little RoboCop appendage, I've had a lot of hurdles to jump over because of this chronic illness that I've had to navigate for the vast majority of my life. And a lot of times, especially early on, I felt that this felt like it was pushing me down, and it felt hopeless and aimless almost. But over time, as I started to engage more and more with policy development, with advocacy, I started to meet with MPs and senators and MLAs and MPPs. And what I started to realize was that, yes, I had been dealt a really difficult hand in living with this disease. And what that allowed me to do was to really fully understand, or more fully understand, all of these diversity of challenges and all these intersectional challenges that folks across Canada may be living with. So I think it's, as curious as it might sound now, it provided me so many opportunities to engage empathetically and understandingly with huge problems that face Canadians of all scales and from all parts of the country, and who live in all different circumstances. So I think most of us on this call can probably relate that there are gaps that you keep witnessing. So in my life, what I kept witnessing was this lack of good quality diabetes care. I kept witnessing people that felt hopeless like I had early on. I kept witnessing people that felt the system's not going to change. Why bother trying to change it? And there's basically a fork in the road that I kept running into, which was I could follow that road and say, whatever, I'll make the best of whatever situation is. Or I could say, no, I keep running into this gap. So does everyone else in my shoes. Something ought to be done about it. So fast forward a whole, couple of decades, and in summer of 2019, I was driving home and got a call from the Prime Minister saying that I had been appointed to the Prime Minister's Youth Council. And at first I thought he must have the wrong number because I had this, imposter syndrome. And I'd like to also remark on the fact that imposter syndrome is going to pop up because leadership very rarely takes the form of someone tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, you should do this. You should push for this change to happen. You should stand up for this cause. Leadership is often a very voluntary, and it's a very imperfect process. And most importantly, it's not something that can be done alone. So all of the greatest results that I've found over the years have been as a result of harnessing those around me and harnessing the power of a team approach. This year, in the past couple of months, I've had the great fortune of working to secure $35 million committed to a national framework for a diabetes strategy, which is, for any political science nerds out there, it's a big deal, and it's the result of a lot of work behind the scenes. And that's just one example of this sort of push. And I wouldn't have even thought a few years ago, 2 years ago, that I'd be able to contribute to something like that. Similarly, as a member of the Prime Minister's Youth Council, writing letters to the Prime Minister around reforms to the disability tax credit and on the need for a national diabetes strategy, contributing to letters on sound economic recovery from COVID-19 that take a youth priority lens, on addressing systemic racism in the federal government and the RCMP. These are not causes that, if I rewind the clock a little bit too much, I would have ever thought that I would be doing or could be doing. So I'd like to highlight, there's going to be a sensation that you feel as you start to push for change that is, well, I'm not an expert, so how could I possibly get started? Well, every expert got started at some point, and they felt exactly the way you do now. And you may be feeling as you get started on these initiatives and keep pushing and keep getting information out to MPs. I know the goals of this project are pretty huge, and I love that idea of getting information and recommendations out to as wide of an audience as possible and building all of that together. So what I'd like to say is, I'm so excited to get the chance to speak to you early on in this event, and I'm so excited to watch the results that come out of it. I'd like to offer myself as a resource if I can ever answer any specific questions around advocacy, around how to push back against some of the tiring nature of calling for change. Please reach out to me, and I'd ask the organizers, please feel free to share my contact information. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with any of you as you move forward on this. And finally, I'd like you to remember those three things about what it takes to lead, because they're not glamorous, but you will eventually have to volunteer to take things to the next level. What you do is going to be imperfect. It might be a little bit ugly. I can't describe how much of the work that I've done that's ended up being successful and being impactful on improving people's quality of life has felt really ugly and sort of messy in the moment. It's been, well, maybe I'll just fire this email off. Maybe this is not what I want to say perfectly, but maybe I just need to say what I know is true right now. So it's imperfect, and most importantly, in the context of this group, it is collaborative. So lean on each other and recognize you're going to benefit most of all when you bounce ideas and bounce creativity off of each other. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. It can be a long journey making change happen, but the first steps are some of the most rewarding and the most challenging. So kudos to you all, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much, Brooks. Thank you for being really unfiltered as well. Thank you for being inspiring. We'll be moving on into our breakout room shortly. But before that, I would just think it's important to review some of the key values that I hope all of us can keep in mind as we move forward today and tomorrow. Let's remember to keep an open mind, acknowledge our common goals, and contribute to the conversations today, and respect the difference in backgrounds and experiences of our peers.
Thanks, Shira. Now that we have an understanding of what values we should keep in mind for the rest of the event, let's transition into our breakout rooms. So today we will be exploring several different topics. These topics will include systemic racism and discrimination, poor mental health, climate change, poverty, food insecurity, and housing. Not only these topics, but within systemic racism and discrimination, we will also include and explore anti-Black racism, ableism, youth justice, anti-Asian racism, 2SLGBTQ+, and truth and reconciliation. I'm convinced that all of these topics will spark well-thought discussions and I'm excited to see what will come out of these conversations. The breakout rooms have been assigned based on which topic you chose in registration. Each of you will see a pop-up on your screen when it is time to join your breakout room. Click the Join Now button to get into your room. The goal of these breakouts is to learn about the state of our topics, facts, and laws about them, and which United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child are applicable to our topics. The United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child is a mouthful. So we can now call it the UNCRC for short. You will be joined by some of our amazing facilitators and content partners in your breakout rooms who will guide your learning and discussions. The round of breakout rooms will be about 30 minutes, followed by a short 5-minute break.
After our breakouts, as Taylor mentioned, we will have a 5-minute break. During this break, we will all return to the main room where you can feel free to take some time to get a drink, go to the bathroom, or just decompress. But if you don't feel like leaving your screen, we have an engaging activity prepared. If you need to talk to anyone today about the Indigenous items we explored, then please remember that Elder Elaine will be present to have those conversations with you. Additionally, we just want to remind everyone that we will be touching on some sensitive topics today, and if at any point during this event you need to speak to someone, we have 2 lovely peer supporters, Nimco and Abdul, who would be more than happy to speak with you. And if you need to speak with one of them, please send the host, Andy, a private message in the chat, and he will get you set up with either Nimco or Abdul in a private breakout room. Finally, if you need serious mental health support at any point of the day, please call Kids Help Phone at 1-800-668-6868 or text 686868 to chat with a volunteer crisis responder 24/7. There are also more options for other helplines in the chat box. After this first round of breakouts and our break, remember to join us back for our second round of breakouts and hear from some really great speakers. See you guys later. See everyone later.
Back, everyone. Now it's break time. Take 5 minutes to yourself or just hang out here with us. We have a cool YouTube video to share with you.
Vanessa, sorry, maybe if you reshare with sound, that might be a little bit more.
Yes, that might be
No
helpful.
No worries.
Saskatchewan, there was a history on this land that had been absolutely ignored. Nobody knew about the residential school legacy. Nobody knew about the intent of the Indian Act, chronic challenges now facing Aboriginals, and we're starting to accept the idea that we have the shared history for which we all are responsible for. When the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was submitted, I was in the room when Justice Murray Sinclair, the chair of the commission, announced Canada. He had just recited a litany of intensive harms against Aboriginal people. And when he said, Canada, you have committed cultural genocide, there was just a silence in that room. And then all of a sudden it erupted in euphoria. We said, survivors want an apology from the Prime Minister in the House of Commons. And I was there and I heard the words, I'm sorry. And then I couldn't see because my eyes were just flowing with tears. I was so happy that somebody had said, I'm sorry. Canada, by the way, is the only Western country that has had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we're trying to look through a new lens. We and Canadians, we as an Aboriginal, we celebrate each other, everybody cheering each other up as we move toward a more equal, prosperous future for all of us. My name is Chief Robert Joseph, and I believe that Truth and Reconciliation is Canada.
Thanks for that, Taylor. We will now hear from the Honourable Minister Guilbeault, who is the Minister of Canadian Heritage of Canada. He will provide us with some insights on the work being done today and some words of encouragement as we move forward. The Honourable Stephen Guilbeault was elected Member of Parliament for Laurier St. Marie in 2019. Minister Guilbeault is a prominent advocate in the fight against climate crisis and has been leading the charge for many years. In 1993, Minister Guilbeault co-founded Équiterre, the largest environmental organization in Quebec, and served as its senior director from 2008 and 2018. He also worked as the director and campaign manager for Greenpeace, and was also the strategic advisor for more than 10 years at Cycle Capital Management, a Canadian fund dedicated to the development of clean technologies. Minister Guilbeault also worked for Deloitte and Touche, as well as Copticom, a consulting firm specializing in the green and social economy and transportation. As an activist and strategic advisor for dozens of governments and business in Canada and abroad, Minister Guilbeault is a pragmatist who works to make a difference by building bridges and relationships. He also very much enjoys sports and bike riding. Everyone, please welcome Minister Guilbeault.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by mentioning that I'm joining you from my home in Montreal on the traditional territory of the Mohawk and other Haudenosaunee peoples. It's great to be with you today as you wrap up your first day of Young Canadians Parliament. I am truly honored to speak to such an amazing group of people. I'm also so pleased that the Government of Canada is contributing to the Young Canadians Parliament project for a second year through the Youth Take Charge program. Le programme Les Jeunes s'engagent vise à renforcer le sentiment d'appartenance des jeunes au Canada par le biais de l'engagement et à leur offrir des occasions de s'investir dans leur communauté. Et c'est exactement ce que fait le Parlement des jeunes Canadiens et Canadiennes. Il donne une voix aux jeunes âgés de 7 à 17 ans. Cette année, il permettra à plus de 6 000 jeunes à travers le Canada de développer leur esprit critique et leur leadership. Non seulement vous aurez l'occasion de partager vos points de vue avec les parlementaires sur des sujets qui vous tiennent à cœur, mais vous pourrez aussi contribuer à la défense des droits de tous les jeunes au pays. You will also have the chance to meet and engage with other young people from coast to coast to coast who share the same motivation and energy to find ways to change the world. Prime Minister Trudeau often talks about young people as the leaders not only of tomorrow, but of today, and you are. Together, young Canadians are one of Canada's greatest strengths and one of our most important resources. As we begin to emerge from COVID-19 pandemic and look with hope toward the future, it is important to remember that Canada's youth are a key part of that future. La pandémie de COVID-19 a eu des répercussions disproportionnées sur les jeunes. Elle a perturbé vos vies, vos projets et pour certains, votre situation financière. En plus d'être contraint d'étudier en ligne, vous avez subi des pertes d'emploi. Vous avez été nombreux à vivre dans l'isolement et l'inquiétude. Votre santé physique et mentale en a souffert. Et vous avez dû faire des sacrifices pour protéger votre famille et vos amis. We need to listen to you and empower you to have a say in our communities, our institutions, and our country as we shape the Canada of tomorrow. It is young people like you who are leading the way. Il est donc essentiel que le gouvernement vous consulte pour comprendre vos points de vue, vos préoccupations et vos perspectives. C'est pourquoi nous avons lancé la toute première politique jeunesse du Canada en 2019. Avec l'aide de plus de 5000 jeunes, nous avons élaboré une politique qui reflète vos valeurs et vos priorités. Cette politique vise à vous donner une voix sur les questions et enjeux qui comptent pour vous. Through these conversations, there is one message that we heard repeatedly. Young Canadians want to have a say in decisions that affect their lives, and rightly so. With this in mind, the government has committed to produce a State of Youth report that describes the situation of youth in Canada. It will give all Canadians a greater awareness of what you are experiencing and what the government is doing to address the issues that are important to you. To inform this report, we completed a series of engagement sessions with youth, including Indigenous, racialized, and LGBTQ youth across the country. Le premier rapport sur l'état de la jeunesse sera publié cet été et tous les 4 ans par la suite. Il sera chaque fois préparé en étroite collaboration avec des jeunes de partout au pays. Ce rapport aidera le gouvernement à élaborer et à mettre en œuvre des politiques et des programmes pour mieux soutenir les jeunes au Canada. Parce que les politiques et décisions gouvernementales ont plus que jamais un impact sur vos vies. L'une des grandes priorités de notre gouvernement est de veiller à ce que chaque personne ait une chance égale de réussir, tout en honorant la grande diversité de notre pays et en favorant l'inclusion, y compris l'inclusion des jeunes. I want to thank Children First Canada for encouraging youth to share their voices and become leaders. Your voices, your powerful young voices, are essential. Canada and the world will benefit from them. Merci. Thank you, Miigwech.
Thank you, Minister. That was extremely inspiring. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of day 1 of this Young Canadians Parliament event.
That's right, Taylor. But before we wrap up for today, we want to do a closing activity with everyone to lighten ourselves up before we go and provide a little bit of learning opportunity. It centers around the idea of implicit bias, and it works as follows. I'm going to ask everyone a few questions, and as I ask them, as I ask everyone a few questions, please write your answers down. Some of us will share answers with the group, so get your papers and pens ready, or just type it on your computer notes. I want you all to think of a firefighter or doctor. What gender are they? What race are they? Do they wear glasses? Do they have a disability? Where did they go to school? Are they born in Canada? What is their ethnic makeup? How old are they? Okay, I'm now going to ask a few people to share their answers. If you are comfortable with it, then please raise your hand and share the answers you have written down, or you can just type in the chat box. Soren says girl, Middle Eastern. No, no, no. I don't know. 141. Okay, cool. How about you, Tegan?
I'm talking about my grandfather. He was male, white, and then what were the questions?
Let me check. What race? Do they wear glasses? Do they have a disability? Where did they go to school? Are they born in Canada? What is their ethnic makeup? How old were they? And I think that was it.
Okay.
No, but also you said firefighter
Oh yeah,
or doctor.
sorry. Yeah, are they a firefighter or a doctor? You can think of any. But yeah.
He was a firefighter. He wore glasses. I'm gonna skip the questions that I forget.
Okay,
And then-
don't worry.
I don't know what school he went to. And then what does like the question about? I don't know. And then he was 85 when he died.
Okay, that was great. Thank you for sharing. I'll go to the chat. See. Oh, Simon, do you want to go?
Sure. So I thought about, well, because probably one of the few doctors I've actually visited with is the family doctor I go to, and most of it is just literally her traits. So she's a woman, of course. As I mentioned, she's white. She does not wear glasses or have a disability. I have no idea where she went to school. Probably a normal high school, and then I believe, and then somewhere, I don't know, in Canada, probably, I don't know. I think her ethnic makeup comes from a lot of European countries, though she doesn't really talk about that. And I have no idea how old she is, though she's pretty young. I think she's in her like mid-30s, though I can't really guess.
Thanks for sharing. I'm gonna read some from the chats. Faiza says doctor, female, South Asian. She's from India and late 20s. Ania says the girl, 27, black. She has glasses, no disabilities, and she's a firefighter. Emma says female doctor, white, wears glasses, Canada. She was born in Canada. She's in her mid-30s. Went to school in U of Ottawa, no disability. Someone else said female, mixed, no glasses. Someone else said Indigenous woman, doesn't wear glasses, does not know the school, but she said she'd be in her 30s to 35. So basically I just want to, like, that's great. Like, all the doctors and firefighters were so diverse. You guys are all amazing. And this just goes to show that we all see things differently and we all have different experiences with doctors, firefighters, of course, including, yeah. And it's important to be aware of this and recognize that it's okay to think differently and understand that we all make up assumptions on things based on our backgrounds and our experience of who our doctors were and who our firefighters were and how we saw them. So just important to acknowledge these assumptions and to work and be as open as possible in readjusting our mindsets in regards to these assumptions. So let's just try to remember this as we connect with one another in the future.
Thanks, Shra. That was amazing. We hope you all enjoyed and are able to leave today with a positive and excited outlook on what is yet still to come. Thank you very much to Minister Guilbeault and Brooks Roche for their time today, as well as our amazing content partners, Ray Stevie's, Amelia Penny Cocker, Light, the Mental Health Commission of Canada, the Black Northern Initiative, Rana Naraz. I'm so sorry, I can't pronounce, I'm bad at pronouncing names, but Nazarati, Equality, Roots to Harvest, and Youth Empowering Youth. Remember, day 2 of the YCP continues tomorrow. Please log on by 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for some more great learning, conversations, and interaction with federal leaders. The Zoom link is the same as today's. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and we will all see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.